So we've had the Miami Grand Prix, and it's that time where we go through and rate each and every one of the drivers. And there's only one place to start, right at the front, and we've got at first Lando Norris with his first race win. Fantastic, wasn't it? P1 from 5th position, no doubt as well. Like, absolutely fantastic after a horrible sprint race as well, where he had a DNF and a poor quali, which actually set that up, didn't it, with a 9th place on the grid. So it wasn't really a great start to the weekend for him at all, was it? And even in qualifying, he only qualified in 5th place, which was a little bit of a letdown considering he was the man that looked like he should have been on sprint pole. So it wasn't like he was on a back foot a little bit, but all went absolutely swimmingly in the race, didn't it? It was a fantastic run. As soon as Sergio Perez cleared, and I think that was the big one. Had Perez stayed out, I think it would have compromised him significantly. He didn't have the straight line speed to pass that Red Bull. We've seen Oscar struggling behind, other cars that's slower. So I don't think Norris would have been able to do that either. But that helped, and as soon as that helped, he was absolutely flying. He was pumping in fastest lap after fastest lap, and he was right on it. Even lap 24, when the tyre deg should have been at its worst, he was still pumping in the fastest lap of the race. So that McLaren clearly had speed, and no doubt the safety car really helped him out. But that's what happens when you look after your tyres and you can, make the strategy work. It was fantastic, and then from there on, you just drove a perfect race. A 10 out of 10 for him for this weekend, despite a horrible sprint. But all is forgiven and forgotten when you put in a performance like that, and for a first race win. And next up, a man he's not been here many times at all, has he? Max Verstappen. He's in 2nd place. It was, a surprise performance for him, wasn't he? He was shocked at getting the sprint qualifying pole, and he was comfortable enough in the sprint race, wasn't he? Won by 3 seconds only. Was that enough to give everyone a bit of hope for the race? Well, it proved to be, didn't it? I did take it with a pinch of salt though when he was saying he was surprised with the sprint pole, because we've heard him say that before, and when race day comes he's just shot off into the distance, because I still think their 1 lap pace isn't quite as good as their race pace, and when they come to the race they just absolutely dominate everybody, don't they? But he didn't this time, did he? Oscar Piastri, no doubt, was keeping him well in check during the race. He, made a bit of a mistake, didn't he? Took out that bollard, and he was really giving it. The team even came on the radio saying, give it maximum push now, and we've not often heard that. And he gave as good as he got, and it just wasn't enough. But a really solid weekend. I mean, if it's 2nd place is as bad as it's going to get after a sprint win and 2 poles, absolutely brilliant. But I'm gone for a 9 out of 10 just because he's just a 2nd place. Otherwise it wasn't bad at all, was it? And Charles Leclerc, a 3rd place finish for him. He started in 2nd. He'll be disappointed possibly, but he just never was in the fight for a win, and he got the maximum out of the car. I think a 2nd place in sprint in the qualifying also, and I think he probably maximised and he probably got the best out of a car this weekend. A really good sprint race. He split the Red Bulls, and the VSC and the safety car didn't help him at all, did it? He missed out on the pitting in the VSC. He pit early in the stint, so never got the benefit of the SC. Decent race. Just wasn't quick enough, was he, in race conditions to really mount any attack on Max Verstappen. But he was neither under pressure either from behind. I've gone for a 9 out of 10 because I think it was a really good, solid weekend from Charles Leclerc. Sergio Perez up next. He finished 4th. He qualified 4th in the sprint. He qualified 3rd and finished 3rd. I think his performance was a bit underwhelming. And 4th place, he actually only benefited because Carlos Sainz got that penalty for the collision with Oscar Piastri, which meant he got upper place. And I think that's, very lucky, isn't it? And a bit... he's looked into that one, and he can be very, very happy with a 4th place, I suppose, because it should really have been 5th. And potentially should have been really 6th because Hamilton was all over the back of him. He was looking in his mirrors pretty much all the sprint race and all throughout the majority of the race. He was never in there for a fight for anything, and just looking in his mirrors all weekend. Is this going to be the downhill from here for the rest of the season? Who knows? This is where it started last season, and I'll be hoping it gets better from here. But I've gone for a 5 out of 10 for Sergio Perez. In 5th place, it's the 5th place man, Carlos Sainz. He finished 5th in the sprint, 5th in the race, qualified in 5th for sprint, and 3rd for the race. But he just didn't have the pace of Charles Leclerc, did he, for this weekend? In the sprint, he was surprised he couldn't get past Daniel Ricciardo, to be honest. He should have really made that move on him. His car should have been significantly faster than that Red Bull. And I am a bit surprised that he didn't make that stick, considering he's been the man in form, hasn't he, so far in the early parts of this season anyway. And yeah, in the race, he looked like he got too angry, didn't he, with the Oscar Piastri one, and that lunge and the incident was probably just a bit too much red mist, because you can see him over the radio saying, like, give me that place back, give me that place back, and did that just sort of cloud his judgment a little bit. I think it was a fair penalty for the incident with Piastri, because he did take his wing and then that cost him, and I think it was just slightly more Sainz's fault than and Oscar's, really. He was the one making the move and should have made sure he could make it clean. 5 seconds is probably fair enough, and also the 1 penalty point that he's got on his license now. It's the first point, so I'm sure he's, you know, pretty comfortable, unless he does something ridiculous like Magnussen, and then, you know, gets a race ban, but he looks way off that. And yeah, I think he'll be a little bit disappointed. I mean, he was only just 0.1 ahead of Lewis Hamilton in the end, wasn't he, with that 5-second penalty, so he would have otherwise been 6th. But yeah, that's why you should always fight to the finish. I've gone for a 5 out of 10, sticking with the 5 for Carlos Sainz for this weekend. I think it was a little bit disappointing, and he should have done a bit better than that, but solid nonetheless, I think. 6th place, Lewis Hamilton, and he had, well, all action, didn't he, this weekend? He was right in the fight in the sprint race with Magnussen, with Yuki, a brilliant battle, a very good move with him, and then with the Haas again, even in the race, wasn't he? It was a good battle with Kevin Magnussen, a really good pass on the race on Yuki Tsunoda, a really cheeky move, brilliant that was. And then he just had the pace, and he was absolutely flying at the end. Just didn't have the straight line speed to pass Sergio Perez, otherwise he was all over his gearbox for pretty much every part of the lap apart from the straight, wasn't it, which was really disappointing. And he'll be gutted he didn't make that extra place by 1/10 of a second. Yeah, he'll be disappointed with that, but a decent sprint in the end. It's quite a race in the end. His sprint was obviously disappointing. We got that drive-through penalty, so he finished 18th in that. But I've gone for a 7 out of 10 because he just looked really racy, and he brought the races to life, didn't he? Both races. 7th place, Yuki Tsunoda. Absolutely fantastic job from him. In qualifying, he started 10th, right in the points, and to move forward when you know the top 5 teams really lock out that. So to get his car up in there, 3 places up, I think that's a fantastic job from him. His sprint also, he picked up a point in that, started 15th, so a really good recovery drive. And this guy is absolutely battling it away, isn't he? He's really putting his name in his hat. When you look at sprint day and you think he's been outdone by Daniel Ricciardo, he's not let that get to him, and actually really brought it home for the race. A fantastic job from Yuki, and really excellent weekend. And he really managed the race well. A 9 out of 10 for him for this weekend. George Russell finished next up in 8th place. Started 7th, so dropped a place from there. His sprint was not great, 11th, and finished 12th. He wasn't happy with his weekend at all, and he was really undisappointed with his race, but he just said he just didn't have the pace, was looking backwards all the way through, and scratching his head a little bit because he was just surprised at how much faster Lewis was than him. Felt like he just went the wrong way with his setup, but I've gone for a 4 out of 10 for George Russell. Fernando Alonso up next at P9 for him. Started from 15th place, so a good recovery drive from him. In the sprint, he started 8th, finished 17th in the end. The sprint really was disappointing because he got the whack, didn't he, from his teammate, and he definitely carries damage from there, and finished way back. In the race, though, it just qualified badly and they just had too much to do, didn't he? It was a great battle with Ocon, some great racing for him throughout, but a very good recovery and 2 really different races for this weekend. But I've gone for a 7 out of 10 for Fernando Alonso. Esteban Ocon, a P10 finish, a point in that Alpine. He started 13th in the race. In the sprint, he finished 15th, started 13th in that one, so that wasn't too good. But overall, you thought he would really struggle. He got a silly start to the sprint, didn't he, with that penalty, a 10-second penalty for driving into someone in the pit lane before the race even begun. So yeah, a bit silly on that point, but to come home and P10 finish in that Alpine that was running last for the start of the season, so he'll be massively happy with that. A really well deserved, brilliant point. I've gone for an 8 out of 10 for him for this weekend. Next up, Nico Hülkenberg. He finished in 11th place. He started in 9th place, a really good qualifying session, wasn't it, for him? In the sprint, he had the brilliant sprint race, didn't he? Qualified in 10th, 7th place finish for him, some good points. Helped, no doubt, by his teammate to hold back, the charging Lewis Hamilton on that one. But other than that, he was brilliant, and it put the car in a brilliant qualifying position, which really helps him in the race to go and make these and pick up some points. He'll be disappointed with the race, though. He had a really good battle with Lewis Hamilton early on. The VSC cost him, and then he only finished 1 second behind a 10th place for some points, so he'll be a little bit disappointed there. But overall, a solid weekend, some points. Gone for a 7 out of 10 for Nico Hülkenberg. In 12th place, Pierre Gasly. Now, he finished in 12th, started in 12th. For the sprint, he finished in 9th place after a 16th place start. It was a poor qualifying that really put him in the back foot for the sprint, wasn't it? But decent recovery from there. Just gives himself too much to do to get some points, and when the car isn't that great, you can't really, afford a poor qualifying, because it is difficult to overtake with these cars. Definitely, you can see that. But in the race, he had some really decent pace, wasn't he? A fantastic battle with his teammate Ocon. That was just absolutely crazy, wasn't it? He won out in the end, but to see the two go wheel to wheel and really tight like that, it was just like the two Ferrari guys, isn't it? They don't leave each other an inch. I absolutely personally love it. It should always be that way. And a really good move on Fernando Alonso, wasn't it? He was struggling early on his hard tyres, but there on, the VSC really cost him, put him in a bad way. He split the strategy, didn't he, from Ocon? He went for the early pit, Ocon went for the late. Obviously with the SC coming late, that really helped Ocon, put him on the back foot, but he was happy with a much better weekend. They were actually looking that they might be fighting for a point rather than just languishing at the back. I've gone for a 5 out of 10 for him for this weekend. Didn't really pick up any points. 13th place though, Oscar Piastri. He started in 6th. His sprint was 6th and a 6th place start in that. A decent sprint race. We couldn't really show his true pace, could he? Because he was stuck in the DRS behind Carlos Sainz and then just brought it home in that position, and no real strategy can happen there to help him out. In the race though, he was brilliant. He got off to an absolute flyer. He was right up into 3rd place, wasn't he? Really hunting. A great move on Charles Leclerc to move up into 2nd place. Kept Max Verstappen honest, wasn't he? Within about 3 seconds. And then pit, just a lap before the safety car came out. Otherwise, I think he was potentially in the hunt for a win, wasn't he? Or definitely on for a podium. And that cost him from there on. The safety car came out, and then he just struggled from there on, didn't he? Got in a battle with Carlos Sainz. The damage there really cost him, and then he just fell down from there onwards. Yeah, disappointing, because it was a race of what could have been, and with a car that was half the spec of what Lando Norris did. I think he did a brilliant job up into the first half of the race. But yeah, disappointing in the end. I don't know what to do here. I'm going to go for a 7.5 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10. I'm going to go for an 8 out of 10 for Oscar Piastri, because I think the first half of that race, he really brought that to life, didn't he? It was really, really impressive. Next up, Zhou Guanyu, who finished in 14th. He started the race 19th place, didn't he? And another poor qualifying in the sprint as well, didn't he? Started 17th, finished 11th in the sprint. And the two poor qualies really meant he had far too much to do. Didn't really have the pace of China, did they? So he'd be a little bit disappointed with that. But yeah, time's running out for Zhou Guanyu, isn't it? He really needs something to put together to show some magic to see why he deserves a race seat, and he's not quite done enough yet. A 5 out of 10 for me. Daniel Ricciardo finished 15th in the race, started last, and his sprint was absolutely phenomenal though, wasn't it? A 4th place qualifying, 4th race finish. Did a brilliant job to hold back Carlos Sainz in the sprint, absolutely tremendous. And then the horrible qualifying session, which really put him on the back foot. He had that 3-place grid penalty, so from 17th he was demoted to last, and that meant just far too much to do in the race. It is a difficult place to overtake. He made up 5 places, but overall absolutely fantastic sprint and a horrible race for him. I've gone for a 9 out of 10, and that's purely down to the sprint, because a 4th place really well outdoes that car. Next place, Valtteri Bottas finished in 16th, qualified in 16th. His sprint he finished in 14th, qualified in 18th. The 1-lap pace seemed to have just disappeared, isn't it? China, you thought, was a turning point for the team and potentially for Valtteri. It's not really gone that way. Some upgrades are really needed for Imola for them. A 5 out of 10 for Valtteri. Lance Stroll, 17th place finish. He started 11th in the sprint. He DNF'd, didn't he, from a 7th place. 50-50 the fault in the sprint, I think. So, you know, that is what it is. But in the race, he just wasn't good at all, was he? Wasn't massively out of position in qualifying, 11th. Obviously beaten by his teammate Fernando in that one, but the early pit stop didn't help. The VSC and then the SC just didn't really help him from that. And then he got that horrible 10-second penalty, didn't he, for Albon? That was a tricky one, that, because I think he should have really let Albon pass straight away. But the fact that Zhou Guanyu passed Albon meant he would have had to drop 2 places to then move forward. But I think ultimately when you get 10-second penalty in the end, you drop more than that. So he should have really just helped that go. A 4 out of 10 for me for Lance Stroll. Alex Albon, 18th place finish for him. He qualified in that position, 14th, and then in the sprint he was qualified last, moved up to 13th. A decent recovery in the sprint, wasn't it, from 20th place, but in the race just really scruffy. Big mistake with a big lockup, didn't he, that let Daniel Ricciardo back, and that dropped him all the way down. He came into pits in the end because he had a massive vibration and a flat spot. So a bit of a scruffy race, but they were on the back foot. They were chewing through their tyres again, the Williams. A real big issue for them, something that they really do need to get on top of. 5 out of 10 for me for Alex Albon. Kevin Magnussen finished in 19th place, 18th place qualifying. He finished 18th in the sprint. Also qualified 14th, then. It's a horrible weekend for him. 5 penalty points, doubled his penalty points for this weekend, and you'd thought after a sprint where he'd, you know, racked up all them penalty points, he'd take it a little bit easy in the race. The collision was with Sargent was clumsy at best. He had his wheel just down the inside. Probably should have seen that earlier and backed out of that, because, you know, you're really relying on a rookie to give you a bit of room in a tight, twisty space where, you know, Logan was significantly ahead of anyway, to not need to give him any room on that one. So we got another 10-second penalty, more points for that, and rightly so. A really horrible weekend, really outdone by Nico Hülkenberg. A 1 out of 10 for me for this weekend overall. And Logan Sargent, he DNF'd, didn't he, in the race, started 17th. In the sprint though, he had a decent sprint. He qualified 19th and finished 10th, so a decent sprint result. I felt he was a bit unlucky with the incident with Magnussen. Could he have left more room? Like I said, possibly, but I just don't think in that corner. Had Magnussen been a lot closer or more on the inside, I can see why, but not from there. And disappointing, but a 5 out of 10 overall, and that's purely because a decent sprint from making up 9 places. And he, again, like Zhou Guanyu, really needs some magic, so performance to show why he should remain in Formula 1. A lot of rumours around his seat at the moment, aren't they, with Williams potentially applying to the FAA to get Kimi Antonelli into that seat. I'm not sure that will happen, but Logan needs to do something, doesn't he? And for a change for this episode, I'm going to go for and do a predictions review, because it just clearly makes sense to do that now. And for me, it was my best yet, wasn't it? I had for the sprint qualifying, I had Lando Norris on pole, who actually had a really good weekend. Max Verstappen took that one. I had Verstappen taking second, who was obviously on pole. Charles Leclerc actually took second place. And Sergio Perez in third place for qualifying for the sprint. I got that absolutely bang on. For the sprint, though, I had Max Verstappen to win. He did. Lando Norris I had second, but it was Charles Leclerc and then Sergio Perez in third place. And actually, I went on to the qualifying. I had Max Verstappen to take pole, which he did. I had Perez to be second, which actually was a great performance by the two Ferraris, wasn't it? Leclerc and Sainz started second and third. I had Leclerc to be in third. And for the race, I had Verstappen in first, Leclerc second, and Perez in third. And actually, if I'd pick that for my sprint and the sprint for the race, I would have been a lot closer, and actually got it right. The two guys, just not in the right order, but the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc and Lando Norris to do brilliantly well. Now obviously you can't predict a Lando Norris first win. That just, for me, that was a massive surprise. And I had Alpine to have a good weekend. I think that's a tick with Ocon taking points and Gasly right in that fight in 12th place rather than languishing at the back that we've seen so far this season. And a bad race for Aston Martin. Well, yeah, because Alonso wasn't blistering or up there out. He did a good job, but not anything special. Lance Stroll did Lance Stroll things, didn't he? So I'm going to be, I'm pretty happy with that one. And yeah, that's the predictions review. It was, I think I did pretty well with that one. But next up, we've got Imola. So watch out for the race preview coming shortly. I think a lot of teams bringing some big upgrades here. So it'll be interesting to see if that and how the land lays when we get to that race. It should be fantastic. And if they've got upgrades like McLaren brought to Miami, then we'll be in for a cracker. Who knows who will end up where, and this is kind of what we want, isn't it? Brilliant weekend overall in Miami though. Love the racing this weekend. Every part of it was fantastic. It was probably one where you'd want to see a sprint weekend there again next time out, because when we went there last time without a normal race weekend, I don't think we quite got the excitement that we got this weekend. But yeah, fantastic racing. Can't go wrong. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment as always. See you next time.